Hey guys, and welcome to my video on practicing for the Adobe Certification Exam in Adobe Illustrator. Now, if you're practicing for the Illustrator exam, you are definitely in the right place, all right? I teach this and I will help guide you through the most common questions that come up throughout the exams, as well as the most common questions that my students have too, all right? As always, leave me a comment down below if there's something that I didn't cover that you would like for me to cover. If you have video ideas that you'd like for me to cover as well, I'd really appreciate it. All right. So I'm going to take this step by step. This video might be a bit long, but I'm going to try to keep it as condensed as I possibly can. So first off, let's talk about the setup of Adobe Illustrator, because a lot of times the questions come up because people aren't familiar with how Illustrator is set up. Right? And just knowing this can actually save you a lot of time as well as a lot of pain in the future when it comes to getting questions wrong and potentially even failing the exam, right? So Illustrator is a hard exam, guys. So watch this video, rewatch it if you need to, all right? And know that I'm here to help. So first off, your tools are on the left-hand menu, all right? So what do your tools do? If the question asks you to do anything manually, draw something, alter something, right? Use any tool to do anything whatsoever, your tools will be here on this left-hand menu, all right? Now, if the tool that you want or need isn't there, know that these three dots right here lead you to extra tools, right? You can change the viewpoint, grid versus list, and there are more tools for you there. So get familiar with this, get comfortable with it, know the names of all the tools. I'm not going to be talking about every single one of them because that is an entire video all on its own, all right? So what I'm going to be doing today is going through the most common questions that I find coming up in this exam and what I think you need to know in order to really be prepared, okay? On the right-hand side over here are your panels, right? Layers are your typical pattern, the layers panel is your most important one, right? Just so you can see everything that's on your screen. Anything that you put into your picture here in the center, right, is going to show up here on your layers panel. Properties, right? This is specific to whatever tool you're on, but also whatever object that you're currently clicked on. So right now I don't have an object, my screen is blank. So if I click on the screen for my general selection tool, you can actually see that the only thing I see is what I can edit in terms of what I see here on my screen, right? So if I want guides, if I want to change something here, if I want to see the ruler, if I want to turn on a grid, right? If I want to show my transparency grid instead of having that white background, this is where I go. Because this white sheet of paper is an illusion, really. It's not there. It's just to help you see things better. So if you don't want it there, because let's say that you're drawing something that's white, right? You can't see white on white. So you can just turn that off. And then you can see your entire project for what it is. In addition, here is where you can edit your artboards, right? As soon as I click edit artboards, I can change my name of my artboard, right? So maybe like practice, test. Change the presets if you want one, as well as the orientation, and just press exit to get out of that. Okay. Excuse me. So the next thing that you need to know is up here is your menus, right? This is your principal menu. If you guys are familiar with Photoshop at all, you'll know that typically underneath the menu, you have what's known as an options bar. Well, if you want to see the options bar on Illustrator, you just go to Window and then Control, right? And then your options bar shows up. But it's not everyone that likes And so let's say that you want a panel, right? That's not showing up here. So let's say that your layers panel isn't there, right? Well, I'm going to go into Window, and Window is where all of your panels are. So if you need something, the Align panel, the Appearance panel, the Gradient panel, right? Magic Wand panel, Patterns, Type, anything, this is where you're going to go. If it's not here on the right-hand side and you need it, this is where you go first, okay? Now, the last area of our screen that we need to talk about is this right here. All right, it is the central part where your image is actually located. Now, anything that affects what this area looks like, not your document itself, just what this area looks like, is under View. So let's say that you want to show your ruler, right? Well, I showed you previously that you can do this through your Properties tab as long as you have your selection tool clicked. You can show your ruler right there, right? But View Ruler will do exactly the same thing. Show rulers. Anything that you want to alter here in this middle panel will be under View. Take a look. Get used to this area. Show grid, right? See what there is. Guaranteed this will show up. A lot of the questions are just to know if you're familiar with the setup interface. Do you know Illustrator the way that it's supposed to be? Do you know how to alter Illustrator? Right? That's all they care about. Then we have the actual preferences for Illustrator. So for instance, take a look at my ruler that I pulled up. Right now, this is in pixels. I don't speak pixels. I'm willing to bet, or maybe points. I don't even know what this is, right? I'm willing to bet that you don't speak this either. In order to change this, anytime the questions ask you, all right, change the unit of something, or change what the background process for Illustrator is, right? You're going to go into Edit Preferences. Now notice I'm on a PC right now. If you're on a Mac, you actually just have to click on the Illustrator name and then it'll go into Preferences from there, all right? So if I go into Edit Preferences, you're going to see that there's a lot of different options. I always recommend just click General because those options are here as well, and then you don't have to worry about sliding off of it at all. So let's say that I'm trying to change my ruler units to inches. Well, then I'm going to come right over here and I'm going to go into Units right there, and I'm going to change General from points to inches, right? It doesn't look like I did anything, but I did. It's only going to show up once I press OK, right? So let's do that right now. See? Now, another thing that is commonly asked that you find in Edit Preferences, General, is a question that says, change the way Illustrator saves a file so that it automatically saves your information every 5 minutes, or some variation of that question, right? For that, Edit Preferences, and you're going to go into File Handling. And it's called this because it determines the way that Illustrator handles that file, right, behind the scenes. So if you look over here, it says automatically save recovery data every, and then it has a bunch of different options, right? I have mine set to 2 minutes. In fact, let me set it to 1 minute because that's just best practices. And take a look. There are different options, but typically when it comes to them asking you things, that's what they're going to ask. All right, units, know how to change the units, know how to change recovery data, automatic saving, and also take a look at guides and grids. A lot of times they ask you to change the color of your guides. All right, so know that that's here as well. But I'm going to leave everything the same for right now. Another thing that you will need to know is the difference between a raster image and a vector image. Right now, if you're used to Photoshop or Windows Paint, anything like that, all of those are examples of raster files. So what is a raster file? A raster file is pixels, is an image made up of pixels, right? Dots on a page. So if you take a picture with your phone and you decide that you want to put that picture on the side of a billboard, right? And you go to expand that picture that big, well, you're going to have a really low resolution picture, right? You're not going to be able to use it. It's going to be really pixelated. It's going to look like square lines everywhere. It's not going to be sharp. It's not going to be clean, right? And that's because raster images are limited to the number of pixels that are already in that picture, right? Now compare that to a vector image. A vector image, in contrast, is made up of mathematical lines and formulas. And so what you're dealing with is I can draw a picture that is 2 inches by 2 inches, right? And I can actually scale that up so that it fits on that same billboard, and I will lose no resolution whatsoever. So that's the benefit of working in a program like Illustrator, because you're working in vector files, right? And in fact, your default save file, the AI file type in Illustrator, is a vector file. Can you change it to be raster images? Yeah, you can rasterize, all right? However, the default is vector, okay? So let's say that you want to change what your document mode is, right? Right now we are in RGB. It's your typical screen setting. And let's say I want to change it to CMYK, right? RGB meaning red, green, and blue color settings. And CMYK is cyan, magenta, yellow, black. K being black because K means key, right? I would go into File, Document Color Mode, and I would change this right here, all right? So it turns out I'm already in CMYK. I didn't pay attention when I created this file. So I would change it there. Right. Now, along that same lines, another question that you'll probably see is change the raster settings. Remember what I said about the raster settings, meaning when it's no longer an AI file and you're going to convert it into a pixel file, right? That's under Effect, Document Raster Effect Settings. So if I click on there, here I can also change that color model, right? And notice that CMYK isn't there though, RGB grayscale bitmap, and I can change the resolution for my raster effect settings to be 72, which is the default size, file size for screen, which is anything that has a screen, right? Meaning internet, TV, phones, anything of that sort, and high, 300 ppi, which is your default settings for anything that's print. If you're going to print it, you're going to want it to be in 300 ppi. All right, here are some other options. White background, transparent background. Typically you want transparent background so you can decide what color background you want based on your sheet of paper. All right, it does depend on what it is you're trying to do. So now let's talk about what each of the most common tools do, because you do need to know what they do. First off, there's a part of the test which is just multiple choice, and a lot of those are drag and drop, right? What tool does what? What does what? What does this mean in Illustrator? It's not going to ask you to do anything practically in the exam. It's really just concepts that you need to know. And so a lot of times that's the kind of question that's going to be asked. So let's go through these one by one, right? This right here is your selection tool. And to show you, I'm going to just quickly draw a shape. Here's a square. All right, and let's fill in that square with, there, Pepto-Bismol pink. Why not? All right. So your selection tool, I like to call it a general selection tool because there is another selection tool, but your selection tool is the one that has the black center, right? It's not filled in, so you can see that black background. And what it does is it selects the entire shape. I can't change anything except for the size of it when I use this, right? I'm not changing really much of anything. I can resize the entire object. Now compare that with your direct selection tool. Now if I go on my direct selection tool and I click, it doesn't look like anything's changed. However, this is what I can do with my direct selection tool, right? I can directly select a very specific anchor point. And I can do that for all of it, right? So if there's an anchor point, I can modify it using my direct selection tool. As we're talking about anchor points, let me show you something else. Use my selection tool, bring this over here, my shape tool, and let's draw a perfect circle. Now, your ellipse tool, you have control over the kind of circle that you draw, right? If you want to draw a perfect circle, however, let me just zoom back in. If you want to draw a perfect circle, just take your tool and let's get rid of this Pepto pink. And there, that's better. Right. All you have to do is press Shift and it will constrain proportions. So if you want a perfect circle, a perfect square, anything with equal sides, right, you're going to want to press Shift. So for this, let me show you something. If I click on my direct selection tool and I click on this, right, a lot of times the question that you're going to get is convert a circle into a teardrop shape, a shape that looks something like that, right? So what you're going to want to do is using your direct selection tool, click on this bottom anchor point, and that bottom anchor point will allow you to see this tool here, this panel's properties here under your properties tab. right? So yes, you can change the fill color. The outline color is called the stroke. The outline width, so let's actually just do this so you can see it, right? You can do all of that here. But what you can also do is click on that bottom anchor point. And over here where it says convert, I can convert that into a corner point. So as soon as I click that, it is now a teardrop shape. And I can accentuate that just by clicking on this bottom point and dragging it down a little bit. Easy, right? I know, don't get bogged down by things. Usually Illustrator questions are really easy. You just need to know the basics and then just don't get overwhelmed. So let's move on. So let's say that they give us a shape, right? And they want us to convert that shape with very jagged lines into something that's very smooth and wave-like. So I can draw that using my pen tool. So I'm going to do this, okay? Notice that as soon as I finish, I have this little stick here, right? If I press escape on my keyboard, that goes away. So what if I want to convert this into something that looks like this, right? This to that. Let's get rid of these. Well, down here, I use my pen tool to draw that, right? And to draw using a pen tool, you just have to click, right? There are more advanced ways to do this. However, they're not going to ask you for it, so I'm not going to show it to you because I don't want to confuse you. So that's how you use that. So let's say, what happens if we want to convert these into something that looks more like this, all right? If you click and hold, notice that there's a little triangle right here on the corner icon of this pen tool. If you click and hold that, you're going to have sub options. So if I take my anchor point tool right here, right? Notice that as soon as I hover over that path, there's a little corner, a little rounded shape tool right there. That's because if I click and do this, I can create a curved feeling from this just by dragging it over, just like that. So if I want to recreate this out of this, click and drag, click and drag. Now notice that as I did that, these handles appeared, right? And that's because these handles show up every time you're dealing with a curved path. So what do the handles do? Well, let's go to my direct selection tool and I can click on handle, right? And it's actually just changing the angle that the curve is, right? So you're not stuck with what you did. You can always alter it. And that's true of this as well. See, right here. Now, as I'm here, let me actually use this as a perfect experience, a perfect example. Okay. I'm clicked on my selection tool and I selected my entire shape, right? And then I went into my direct selection tool. And you can see that each one of these each corner has a little circle in the middle of it, right? Well, that determines the corner radius of the corner that you're selecting. So since they're all there and I'm in my direct selection tool, I can actually move one and it moves all of them, right? So if I want to quickly change all of the corners, I can do it that way. However, let's say I didn't want to change all of them, right? Well, then I'm not going to select the whole image. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my direct selection tool and I'm just going to highlight that one anchor point. Notice that the other ones are not highlighted here. So I can go ahead and just change that one, all right? All right, so now let's look down this list, see anything else that's really important for me to show you. Your magic wand tool, that is highly important. All right, so to show you your magic wand tool, let me go ahead to one of these pictures that I've already selected. I have 3 pictures here, and let's do the magic wand tool with this one. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to resize this image. I'm going to press Shift to constrain proportions. There. And let's zoom in a little bit. Okay. Now, this is a PNG image, so it's a raster image, right? If you take a look at your layers right here, and I collapse that layer, you can see that it just says image. I have no sub layers. So I can't actually click any of the colors because it's just a raster image, right? So I'm going to go into properties, and down here, if I look under quick actions, I have image trace. Now, image trace is the tool that you want to use in order to convert a raster image into a vector image, right? I can press it there, or I can go into window, image trace, because remember, Window is where all of your panels live, even if they're not opened, right? So image trace, and that will open this guy up right here. Now, it's not highlighted because I actually haven't selected the whole thing, right? So I have to highlight layer 1. Notice that I didn't just click on, let me unclick to show you. Notice that I didn't just click on layer 1. That did nothing. In order to make this work, I have to click on that target icon. There. Now, I can decide what I want these colors to be. Now, I chose this image to use for this because it's actually really limited color palette. So take a look at this preset. You have different presets: high fidelity, low fidelity, 3 colors, 6 colors, 16 colors, right? Different modes, black, white, grayscale, and so forth. So a typical question that you might get in terms of image trace is, convert this raster image into a vector using the 6 color preset, right? Lots of words. It just wants you to go into image trace, preset, 6 colors. Now, as soon as I did that, it did it already. Now, notice it did some terrible things to her eyes. So I'm actually going to come over here and choose 16 colors. That helped it a little bit. And let's go for high fidelity photo, because when I used those other ones, all these eyelashes kind of got lost. So let's go to high fidelity photo. There. All right, we still lost her eyeshadow, her eyelashes, but it's still her. We can still see it's her. All right. So now we're dealing with a vector image. All right. It still looks exactly the same though. You might be wondering why. Nothing changed in my panel, right? Well, now it says image tracing, but it's still just that one layer. And that's because these are still grouped. So if you go into properties, you can click on expand. Now you can see the paths for every color, every shape that we have. So let's go ahead and get rid of this. And if I click on this, go into my layers, now you can see all the paths that make up this image. Okay. And however, if I click on one, it clicks on all because they're still grouped. So we'll go ahead and press ungroup, or you can go into object, ungroup. There. So now when I click on one, I really am just clicking on one, right? So I can get rid of that background. In fact, let's do that. Let's get rid of that background, right? Here's her hair. That's what image trace does. I don't want to move her hair, so it's going to put that back into place. So let's go back to our magic wand tool. There are 2 different ways for you to select similar colors in Illustrator. One is the magic wand tool, and this is this guy right here. It looks like a wand, right? Think Harry Potter. So if I click on this, there's really only one red, orange hair. So if I click on this green of her dress, notice that it already selected the green of her eyes and the green of her headband, right? And I can click over here on fill, and I can change all of it at once. See? So that's a great, easy way to recolor. Now, let's undo that. Get rid of magic wand tool. Another way that you can select different colors is by clicking on the color that you would like. So let's stay with the green, right? And I'm going to go into select, same, and then fill color. They do ask this a lot on the exam. As soon as I do that, notice it selected exactly the same thing, but it didn't select the eyes. Do you realize that? And that's because the magic wand tool has a threshold setting, right? Where it'll select similar colors, whereas the select same fill color, it will select literally only the exact same color. So those are the two differences. And I could do the same thing that I did before. Right? Let's move that back. All right, so let's say that we're not trying to change one particular color here, but we want to change all of the colors of this image to have a different preset, right? They ask this. They say, recolor this artwork to have the art history Russian pop, right? Russian poster preset. So what you're going to do is you're going to take your thing and let's select the whole thing, right? Right now you only selected the hair, so I'm actually, this is the outside. I'm going to select all of it by drawing a box around it, and I'm going to group them together. Control G. You can also do object group, all right? Now that I've grouped these, notice that I can recolor. Okay, so I'm going to click on recolor, and it gives me this. Let me show you. This is so cool. I love recoloring. Right? So if there's something that I want to change, I can just move that around, and it changes everything, right? So you can do that manually, but let's reset it. If it tells you a preset to use, you can go into color library, and I said art history, Russian poster art, and you can change it from there. And you can still modify it here. So if they tell you to do extra modifications, that's what they want you to do. Okay? Let's reset though and get rid of it. You get rid of it by pressing Recolor again. Cool, right? I know, I like it too. So let's see, what else do we have? We've covered shapes, right? You have polygon tool, star tool, line segments. You can just draw lines. Right? Let's undo those though, because I don't want that there. Pencil tool, paintbrush tool, blob brush tool. Your pencil tool will literally just draw your path. You can have a stroke or not, doesn't matter. Your blob brush tool, okay, and your pencil tool, your paintbrush tool, I apologize. Now the reason why this has a little line there that's saying I can't write anything is because I haven't selected my paintbrush. So I'm going to go into Window, Brushes, click over here, and if I select this brush, right, let's do bristle brush library, select a brush, now I'll be able to write. Okay, so when you see that when it comes to the paintbrush, that's why. So let me explain to you what each one of these does, because they do different things. The pencil tool, you will be able to see here that it has really the most anchor points out of all of them, and it's one path. It's not thick, all right? The blob brush tool, you can alter the thickness, see? And the same thing for the paintbrush tool. It's similar to the paintbrush tool. It's similar to the pencil tool, but the paintbrush tool, you can change the different paintbrushes. And notice I can do that after the fact as well. I just need to select one to begin with, and then I can change it afterwards, right? So what's the difference between the blob brush tool and the paintbrush tool? Well, let me show you. Let me just get rid of these, and let me just get rid of all of these already. And let me show you. So take a look at my panel, and I'm actually going to create a brand new layer for this. This is my paintbrush tool. So if I draw 1, 2, 3, and if you look over here, there's 1, 2, 3 paths. I can actually click on one and delete it. Click on the other one and delete it, right? That's the paintbrush tool. It will, every time you lift your fingers up from your mouse, every time you unclick your mouse, you're drawing a brand new path. As opposed to your blob brush tool, a lot of graphic artists like to use blob brush, but it does give you limited editing abilities afterwards, is 1, 2, 3. I still only have 1. See that? So if I delete one, I delete them all. I actually can't click on this and change it around because they linked together. They're fused. They became a blob, right? Not the best word choice, but that is what it is. So now we have our text tool, our typing tool. There are a couple different ways that you can type in Illustrator, and they're all really cool. I'm a typing junkie. I love the type aspect of Illustrator. So your first and foremost one is just click on your screen with your typical type tool, and Lorem Ipsum pops up, and that is your placeholder text, right? So under Lorem Ipsum, I can just, as long as it's highlighted, I'm going to write text, this is text, right? Another way that you can do this, same type tool, I'm going to draw a box, and it's actually going to pre-populate my box with placeholder text, right? Same Lorem Ipsum, it keeps going. This is just dummy text. It means absolutely nothing. So that's the second way to do this, right? I didn't type anything this time, but it automatically filled in that box for me, the box that I created. Another way to do this is using your shape tool. So let's go to my shape tool right here, and let's choose a circle because I feel like it's the easiest way to see this. And I'm going to draw a circle. And now I'm going to go back to my type tool, and I'm going to click on the path. Notice that it says path on it. It's highlighted. So I'm going to click on that, and it's automatically going to fill in placeholder text inside the shape that I did. Okay. So a common question regarding text that we get is text wrapping. So draw a shape and make the text go around that shape, right? So let me take my circle here, and I'm going to choose a star, and let's draw a star and put it directly above this circle. So right now, let's change the color of that so you can really see what I'm talking about. So right now you can see that the star is above the text, right? If I change the positioning, the text is above the star, but it's still going. There's actually no stops in it. So what if I wanted the text to stop here and continue on the other side of that shape, right? Well, put your path, your shape, above your text, and then you have to select both of them, go into Object, Text Wrap, Make, all right? Go press OK, and now look what you get, right? The text actually went completely around it. They will ask that. Most likely they'll ask that. And I can even make this, if I delete it, it's back. If I make it invisible, however, then I can just make it, it looks exactly like this. Cool, right? All right. So that's mostly text and how to do that. So let's talk about text in how do I change the actual properties of my text, right? That's going to come up as well. So let's go ahead. Let's type a little bit. So Lauren, whatever, new line, right? Gibberish. So if I double click, I'm editing my text. Right? Now you can go into Window, Type, and Character. And that will bring you your text editing box right here. You can change the font, right? Easy. I think most people are used to that, so I'm not going to really cover that. I deselected by mistake. You can change the size of the text, right? Again, most people are used to that, so I'm going to make it bigger just so you can see that a little bit better. And now we get to things that are a little bit more complicated, a little bit more likely to be tested, honestly, right? And that is tracking, kerning, and leading. So here is kerning. Kerning is actually the space between two specific characters. So let's say that I want to make the space between the J and the L increase, but only the space between the J and the L. So I'm going to come over here to my kerning, and I can increase that. Right? So let's keep on increasing it so you can see how that changes. I'm actually going to already increase it to 1,000. Right? And that only impacted the space between the letters that I had my cursor. So I can do that exactly the same thing. Right? Let's automatically go to 1,000. There we go. So let's say that I wanted to change the spacing between all of my selected text right there, all of that second line. Well, if you look right next to it, right, this is highlighted here. Right, notice on kerning, there's actually a little cursor in between two letters, right? Because that's where you want to put your cursor. But if you look on tracking, the text is highlighted because you need to highlight it in order to make this change. So what tracking does is it changes the spacing between a block of text equally. So if I increase the tracking here, notice that it does so evenly throughout all of my letters. Okay. And the third one is leading. So if I highlight these two, actually just these two, if I highlight these two, we have leading. Now you can see that for leading, the symbol is an A, a line, and an A. And that's because it's really just line spacing, right? It's line width. So if I increase this, I can increase or decrease, but all I'm doing is increasing or decreasing the space between those two lines. Are they getting bigger or smaller? Right, so if they ask for line width leading, that's what they're talking about. Perfect. So this is the traditional type tool, right? If you click and hold here, there's actually another one. It's called Type on a Path. Vertical type tool, that's exactly what it sounds like it does. It types vertically. However, Type on a Path, they like to test a lot. So let's take one of the ways that we know we can write on a path, right? So let's create a path using our pencil tool. Why not? So let's come over here, choose our pencil tool, and I'm going to follow this hairline to the best of my abilities right now using my mouse. Okay, so I drew that. Now let's get our type on a path. And if I click right here, I don't know if you can see that or not, but it's actually pink and it says path. If I click right there, hold on, you can't see anything because my font is way too big. So let's make it 9. Okay, and let's make the spacing of this 0. And let's make this auto. So now when I do this exact same thing again, okay, highlight until you see the word path and click, And notice that it's following that path. All right. Let me zoom in so I can show you a little bit. Oopsies. There. Click away from it. And let's zoom in so we can see what we're dealing with. So if I click on my direct selection tool, you can actually see a couple things. Here we have a box, another box, and then here we have a middle line. So if I want to make this text go to the outside of this, I just alter that line. If I want to change where this starts and ends, if you hover over the start line or the end line, notice that there's a little icon that appears because I can change this down so it takes up more or less room. Right? It's still going to be constrained by the path that you drew, but you can decide where it starts and ends, which is actually a really cool concept. See? Very cool. So that's writing on a path. Honestly, I think this is good to stop right now. We've covered a lot. Tell me anything else that you would like to know, anything that you think I should cover, and I hope this video helped you. All right? Bye, guys. See you soon.